On episode 65 of Chit Chat, it's time again to answer some viewer questions, because we'd like to know what you think. We've taken a look back to see what we've done, and we share a little bit about where we're going. But rest assured, it's gonna involve board games.
Welcome back to Chit Chat.
Yes, welcome back. Are you saying welcome back to me,
Everybody?
Because I wasn't here last time?
That's true.
Welcome to them. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, welcome back to Chit Chat. This is episode 65. We're going to do another mailbag episode, but we're not just going to do that. We have a couple questions to talk about that we got from, I think, the last mailbag episode. But we're also going to talk about the state of gaming, because there's very little controversy going on in the world of gaming. Just kidding. We're going to talk about the state of gaming in general, but sort of in a positive way. Talk about the state of our channel as well. And a lot of that comes from some of those questions that we asked you last time we had a mailbag episode. And of course, we're going to talk about some of the games we've been playing, because we've been playing a lot, trying to get a lot of content ready to get on the channel. But before any of that, we've got a winner from last week's episode.
That's right. So last week we gave away a Geezy. It's going to Olivia, let me get this right, Lothery, Lothary, whatever it is.
Sounds
Email
good.
us at manvsmeeple@gmail.com to claim your awesome prize of a Geezy. And this week we're giving away the deluxe edition of Tiny Epic Tactics with the expansion little battle map. So all you need to do is comment below to be entered to win. All right.
All right, so we're going to talk about state of gaming. Do you want to start with the questions, though? Let's get the mailbag out of the way. We took a couple questions. One of the things we talked about a lot last time we did a mailbag episode was our channel, and a lot of feedback came in, particularly about reviews. Now, we're all hoping that since then you've watched some of our other content and you've recognized that we've actually started doing reviews in a slightly different manner, or a significantly different manner. And we're going to keep doing that sort of thing. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But a couple of the questions were really focused around that. Kira, do you have the first one? I can't see it, so you'll have to read it.
All right. Our first question is content I would like to see in a review. It's not even really a question, it's more of a comment. Content I would like to
Yes.
see in a review format. Decision space in a game. How does the game compare or contrast with other similar games?
Yeah, so that was a two-part. I actually edited that down because it was a big, long comment. And who is that from?
Blaine Miley.
Blaine Miley, thank you for the comment. And it was much longer. Sorry, Blaine, for editing down. But the first part was decision space in a game. One of the things he wanted to talk about or wanted to see from our reviews is how many decisions are made and that sort of thing and how they branch off. And Jeremy, you want to talk about that a little, because I know you touched a little on that with your Tekenyu review in terms of what makes a good Euro and some of the decisions that are made.
I did. I touched on both of those different questions. I'm going to start the other way around and talk about comparing and contrasting, which I did in Tekenyu. First thing I want to say about just reviews in general is, like, it shouldn't be news. Like, we recognize that we have not done a lot of reviews lately, and that's the fault of our own. So we're trying to make sure that this year we pump out a lot more reviews. And we have 3 of them up on the channel right now in that new format. So please, I invite you guys to go take a look at those. We have Tekenyu up. We have Pan Am, which is a really good game. And then also we have Monumental, which is up on Kickstarter. And it's, second edition or second run of them. So go check those out. All right, so Tekenyu is one of those that I actually focus on both of those. I kind of compared it to 2 other games that Tashini has also done, being Teotihuacan and Zolkin. And I try to use that as like a reference, like, which of these games do I like best, and why do I like each of these in a very specific way. So I tried to touch on those different types of things. Each of them are different. And I think that's something we're going to try to focus on more, is really getting away from like the surface level of why we like a game, because it's fun. Yeah, we like games because they're fun, obviously. But what are those triggers that really, make us enjoy that game? What are the things that really drive that game to be not only appealing to us, but to appealing to other people, or possibly appealing to other people? So being able to write, like, if it's not obvious, the ones that I've done so far are scripted. And they're scripted for a reason, because when you're on the fly, which is something David and I have done for years, where we're just talking about a game, and that's awesome. It's fun to do it that way, and it's very easy. But I oftentimes forget, like, what I really want to say about that game. It just kind of goes to my head, and then I never say it, and then I go back and I edit those videos, and David edits those videos, and we look and say, why didn't we mention that? Or why didn't we mention that? And being able to script these and really kind of dive into the things that really mean something to us are important. Going back to the other question is decision space. I talk about this not only in reviews, but pretty much anytime I talk about games in general. Like, I talk about sandboxes. Like, I like games that aren't sandboxes in the traditional sense, like you have a map and you can do anything. Sandboxes in the sense that they give you all of these different components, and it's up for you to make the decisions on how to combo these things together into different ways. Tekken is one of those games where you have to think in multiple different ways to combo the different actions to get the outcome at the end of the game. Decision space is something we almost always talk about no matter how we review the game, whether it's David and I together, or Kira and I together, or Ryan and Kira together. But that is something that we always try to discuss in some format.
Yeah, I mean, David and I never play games together, just in case you were wondering.
No, it's one of the MVM rules, actually. Ryan, you did kind of a review versus piece recently, which
I did.
Very directly compared two games. And it's a little different than I think what Blaine was getting at, but what did you do with that review?
Yeah, I mean, it is a little different. I mean, that was a unique opportunity to actually compare two very similar games. They were both Talisman games, one being Batman, one being Kingdom Hearts. But tying this in with the decision space, the decisions that you have to make in those games are still very different. So it was really interesting for me. They are both still Talisman, but one of those games is much meaner and much more of a take that, and that's the Batman game, whereas Kingdom Hearts was more of a kind of a family-friendly style of gaming. And so, of course, those decisions are going to be very different. I mean, adding in that PvP element introduces a whole new chain of decisions. And I think that these decisions, they don't have to just be, you don't have to have a ton of them. I don't think you have to have, 100 decisions on your turn, but you have to have really meaningful decisions. I mean, if you give me 100 decisions that all lead me to the same place, then the decision I make doesn't really matter. But if you let me make these really unique decisions, do I want to use my turn to advance myself, or do I want to use it to do PvP or go against another player and knock them back a couple pegs? Like, both are theoretically helping me get ahead, but the way that impacts the rest of the game is kind of a butterfly effect. And those are the decisions I like to see, when one decision cascades into the other. And I don't want to give too much away about which version I prefer, because I want you to watch the video, but you can probably gather just from hearing me talk about it which one I think offered those really important decisions.
I think one of the other things I want to mention briefly about reviews, which I enjoy, is that we're not diving into like the gameplay. Like, everyone does gameplay in some format. We're really just distilling down the experience and what we liked about the experience. And oftentimes, Dave and I will sit at a table and we have played a game multiple times. We're like, okay, we're going to review this game today. Let's go. And once we hit that record button, we find ourselves wanting to explain every single nuance that you take in the game. Like,
it's super hard.
And it's really not serving anyone unless it was a playthrough. To really sit through that stuff. Maybe to some people, but some people just want to know if the game is good or not. And that's what we're trying to focus on. In addition to that, we're also scoring games, which I think is something we've both been talking about for quite some time. Do we put a score on a game, and how do we justify two games that are very, very different from one another, but still fall in the same score? So we're trying to be careful about the way we score them, but we also want to make sure that when you see an 8 or you see a 9, it's something that we really, really enjoy. And if multiple people in our group have played it, we also try to include their score in there as well. So you say, okay, Jeremy really likes this game. He gave it an 8, but David or Ryan didn't like it as much. They gave it a 6. And then you can make comments below, and then they'll answer maybe why they didn't like something. Just so I get an idea more about what people on our team like compared to other people.
Yeah, and we can we'll definitely want to try to talk about the review scores a little bit more in detail, because that sort of scale, and a 1 to 10 scale, means many different things to many different people. Sometimes someone could see a 6 or below and go, oh, they trashed that. I mean, and this probably even means different things among the four of us. But I would say that for me, anything north of 5 is a good game.
Right.
Honestly, once you start getting south of 5 is where I feel personally the flaws are stacking up with Kira's putting on an Indiana Jones hat.
John is asking me to wear the hat.
Okay.
All right.
Sling
So anything
notes here.
south of 5, I think it's where the flaws start to stack up more than the things I like about the game. One thing I wanted, before we move on to the next question and before Kira talks about this, that I wanted to say about decisions. I have a few reviews coming up here in the next week that I've been working on, and decisions are a big part of those. In fact, all of those games, almost all of those games. I've been working on Tawantinsuyu and Dead Reckoning, which should be hitting next week. And then, interestingly enough, I don't know that it's going to be quote-unquote a versus episode, but I do want to do a review of the new Back to the Future games, sort of in tandem with one another, because it's very interesting to me that two licensed Back to the Future games came out pretty much like at the exact same time, right? I think they're all coming out right now.
Well, the one that's coming was announced like last Gen Con. And so the one
really? The
that we've already got kind of surprised me when I kind of heard rumblings it was coming right before, but I was thinking the other one would come out first, but they did. They kind of are coming out like a week apart, but they're very different games in how the mechanics work, from my understanding.
Yeah, I haven't played the dice game, but I've played to death the Prospero Hall one that's a co-op. I'll save my words about that game for when I do the review. But like I said, on the decision front, one of the things that's important to me about decisions is that they happen frequently throughout a game. Yeah. I love a game where, I mean, you're always going to be making some decisions, but a good game, particularly a good Euro, almost every aspect that you're doing is kind of okay, what should I do here? Whether it's what cards am I discarding out of my hand before I draw back up because X, Y, and Z, or should I place here? And what are other players going to do? And one of the games that we've been playing recently, Tawantinsuyu, there's two types of decisions or categories. There's decisions, in my opinion, but then there's also options. And I think options shouldn't be confused with decisions. Like, a game can have tons of options, and that's like 173 spaces you can go to. But if they all do similar things, it's really not that many decisions. And it's an interesting thing to sort of look at when you're looking at a game like that, because the gameplay, like any good Euro, has a very simple structure. You're doing one of two things, but then within those two things, those two options are myriad options in and of themselves, which gets a little crazy and a little brain melty.
Got two questions here that people are asking in the chat. I'm going to answer briefly. One said, have I played Tekkenu again? David had the copy, and I have not played it again, but I plan to play it this weekend. And then another person wanted to know if our Tawantinsuyu games have gotten shorter in length. And I can say that our first game was over 3 hours.
It was long.
And then David and I just played a 2-player game, and it was an hour and a half, hour 45.
Yeah, like probably an hour and a half. The thing with Tawantinsuyu, and I'll talk more about this in the review, it is long. It's for sure long. Mm-hmm. Variety of reasons, one of which is it can be prone to AP. There are a lot of decisions and a lot of options. And there's also a lot in a 4-player game changing around the board as you play it. So it is always going to be on the longer side of a game. But with that said, if two people played the game a lot and they played together, you could easily knock that game out in an hour to an hour and a half, I think. I'm very convinced of that. But you just have to have experience, and you have to kind of know the different things that you can explore in that game.
So should we move on to question 2?
Sure.
All right. Michael Pistolas.
Yes.
I like the idea of a rating system. Also really like Chit Chat in round 1. Great work. David, these are not questions.
I know. Well, there weren't a lot of questions. I scanned down through that, and there was a lot of people talking about more reviews. I like the idea of reviews. I think more than questions, they were just kind of like responding to what we were talking about during that episode. But I thought it was relevant, particularly with what we've been talking about, what we're doing with our reviews, what we talked about with the rating system. And we can talk, I guess, a little bit more about that now if we want to. One of the things Jeremy alluded to that we could talk about a little bit more is we are going to try to not just throw numbers around. If Kira, Jeremy, and Ryan have played a game a lot, and there's times where the three of them get together and play games and I don't, I'm not going to play it once and go, I'll give it a blank. You know, we're going to sort of steer clear and make sure that the numbers that we're putting forth are relevant because someone's played it a lot. And I can tell you for a fact, And we've always played the games that we've reviewed a fair amount. We're playing them a lot more now. I mean, at least thus far, the reviews that we've all been working on. I mean, I didn't even work on Tekkenu. None of us did, but I've played Tekkenu a ton, both online and with the copy that we got. I might even want to adjust my score. That's the other thing that's fun about the scores. What do you guys think about the idea of, like, down the road, maybe even in a Chit Chat episode, having a segment where we kind of go back to a few reviews and check in on our scores and go, so Jeremy, would you still give that a 9, or do you like that game better now?
Yeah, I mean, if I may, because I've thought this for a while, and we've had this conversation, because your opinion of a game will certainly change. Even like people say, when you do a review, you should play the game 3 to 5 times. Okay, but sometimes it's not until like your 10th or 11th play when you're like, oh well, here's the strategy that fixes this issue that I had with the game earlier. Like a great example is Architects of the West Kingdom. There are a lot of point engines in that game, but only a few of them are a surface level. So if you've played that game 3 times, you've maybe dabbled in some of those very surfacey levels of strategy. But once you get into like your 6th, 7th, 8th play and really like see how all the cards work together, you can start scoring massive points in that game. And I think it's not realistic that we're going to play every game 10 times, or that we're going to be able to really get down into every strategy before we do our review, or else it's going to take 6 months for a review to come out. But I think that going back and looking at things maybe a year, 2 years down the line, especially after an expansion comes out, because that can completely change your score. But even so, just learning how to play the game, some of these really complicated Euros that we love to play, it's easy to get sucked into. We talked about the statue strategy in Tekkenu, or the kelp strategy in Underwater Cities, and it's very easy for these to feel like very powerful, overwhelming strategies. But then maybe by your 10th play, you know how to beat it, right? So that has to change the way you think of the game overall.
I'm not sure. I mean, I understand what you're saying 100%, but I don't know if I buy into the whole, like, board games have to be reviewed in a different manner than movies and video games, because you don't play through a video game 10 times to see if you liked it. Like, you pretty much know after you've played it 2 to 3 times how you feel about it. And if you played it 10 times and you found all the strategies, you've gotten 10 times worth of time out of that game. Like, I'm not sure I buy that. Like, I don't need to watch Star Wars 100 times to know if I like the movie. Like, I get the argument, and I understand why some people may say, well, have you played it 10 times? Have you played it enough to see the strategy? Yeah, I have, but also I just really freaking like the game.
Well,
like, that can be enough sometimes.
Well, no, sure. On the positive side, sometimes I think our initial reaction to a game, and maybe not 10 times, but we've played games 1 or 2 times and had, more often than not, a not so great perspective on it, and that can be for such a variety of reasons. Forget about the strategies. I think that's a valuable point. The fact that other strategies can occur to you, and it's likely going to increase your attitude about the game. But the other thing is the table experience. You might play a game with the wrong group of people, and it was just put such a sour taste in your mouth, and you associate it with that game. You're like, no, screw that game. I never want to play that game again. But it really has nothing to do with the game as much as it did that particular night.
Yeah, I agree.
Kira, what are you going to say?
I was just going to say, I mean, are you going to get a game back to the table after your first experience? I think it's important to note, in my opinion, like, how did that first experience, how easy were the rules to learn? How long did it take to set up and tear down against the amount? Like, there's a value there, right? How long is the rule book, and how much time do you have to spend in learning and setting up the game, and how much gameplay am I going to get out of it? And that first experience, if all of bucket 1 is too much against bucket 2, the game's probably not going to get back to my table. And, I'm only going to play it once. Do we want to talk, do people want to hear about that first initial experience, or you want to know after 3 or 4 plays? I think that's an interesting thing too, because, sure, I don't care for the game because of the first experience was so poor, for instance, for whatever reason. And what were those reasons? I think those are interesting points too. And to Jeremy's point about, like, the movie review style, like, your first impression of a movie isn't good. Are you gonna buy the DVD? Probably not, right?
No, I get that. I do kind of err on the side with Ryan. I don't think movies and board games are exactly the same in that respect. I mean,
even video games.
Yeah,
Really.
or even video game. Board games, at least for me, it takes me a few plays to appreciate all the strategies. It takes me less time to appreciate all a movie has to offer. Really, usually I get that in the first go.
But
And when
but
you're
if you,
looking at a, sorry,
I was gonna say, if you've played a game 10 times and you figured out all the strategies, does that make the game any less good? I mean, you've explored
Oh.
everything the game has to offer.
I don't
so...
think is that what I don't think that was Ryan.
no,
Ryan was
I
saying.
was so comparing it to a video game is a really great example because sometimes I might say to you, "Did you play this video game?" And you say, "Yeah, I wasn't into it after 3 hours." And I might say, "Okay, well, when you get like 5 or 6 hours in, that's when it like really opens up." And then you might get a little farther and go, "Okay, I really like this." Because when you're playing a video game, you might be playing that 20 to over 100 hours for some of these games like Fallout or Skyrim. And being able to play the game and really master the systems is going to give you this feeling of accomplishment that is probably going to elevate the way you feel about that video game. But I think playing a board game one time, maybe even just an hour or 2 hour experience weighted against, 20 or 40 hours with a video game, like you need to play a board game maybe 5 or 6 times to equal that same amount of time spent with the product. And I don't have an answer, but I wonder if that has something to do with the difference here.
I don't know. We could debate this all night.
Yeah, Kira's laughing at something. Kira, is there a comment that you're
Alicia is
struggling at, or just
confirming
laughing
with
at?
Dave, Gator Dave, that you have a sultry voice akin to Julio Iglesias.
Oh,
because they want you to end
okay.
on a song again, and I just kind of.
I'm glad I asked.
Yes. All right.
Should I sing
Oh,
Davy
and now
Crockett again?
Gary's in the comments. Everybody's always asking where Gary is. Gary's in the comments, y'all.
There he is. We found him.
He says you're more like Barry Gibbs.
Killed the mood.
All right. So was that it? Was that the second? Do we have another question?
Those are the comments.
That is it for questions.
Today.
So if we want to talk anything more about where we're headed with the channel, I mean, one of the big things that we wanted to focus on is kind of what we're doing with the reviews, I would say, and this isn't new news. The other thing we want to do with sort of our other content is to just have a little bit more fun and relax with a lot of the rest of our content. We will probably, even after the whole COVID thing, hopefully, goes away or we can put it behind us sometime in the near future, we'll be able to do these sorts of things ongoing, whether we have to or not. It's much easier for us to oftentimes jump in here and do some live content like this. And then to Kira's point, I thought this was an interesting thing. We might be able to come up with a new format. Maybe we all play a game and we're like, we don't really want to play this again. And maybe that's time for like a knee-jerk episode. And we call it knee jerks. And we just get on there and say, this game sucked. And we might be wrong, but it's a knee-jerk reaction. So you know what? It doesn't matter.
I do think, and I'm going to extend that conversation, I do think that board games are far easier to get an idea of whether or not you like them than video games. Like, you can play a board game once and pretty much know.
Jeremy's really, this could be a whole episode. I mean, really.
Jeremy, we need to dig into this.
Although I've been wrong before. I was wrong on Time Stories. Although by the end of it, I felt like I was right again. So I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, that's a good point. That one, it
I'm pretty
out
sure you were wrong.
The new one.
I think I was wrong and then right and then wrong
again. But then
again.
the new one came out with writing from the Delks, and it was quite good and interesting.
It was different, for sure.
Interesting and different, yes.
Yeah.
So.
All right.
We want to move on to what we've been playing?
Sure.
Yeah.
Who wants to go first, Kira?
Me? All right. I suppose me.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're running the picture, so you choose who goes
first. So,
first.
My friend's birthday was last weekend, and they came over for some social distance-ish gaming. They're our family friends, and so we're around each other occasionally anyway, but we, still did all the things, but it was birthday time. So we got together, and we played. His wife really likes, and also my friend really likes the escape room type games. And I've been sitting on The Awakening for a while, so I broke that out and we played it. It was great.
Long while.
There's so many potential possibilities of where we could have gone, and I don't know. I feel like I wished we'd probably gone down a different ending, just because I didn't feel like I got enough, but that's why you can play again and you can make different decisions and other things are going through. So it was really interesting. Have to play the one that Jeremy has, low memory, at some point to see how I like it in comparison. And then the other game we played, because The Awakening did take quite a bit of the evening, outside of Food and Cake, of course, was Custom Heroes, which is a trick-taking game I haven't broken out in quite some time. Partially because it has a lot of put away time on it because of how the game works with these really interesting sleeving mechanism of changing the different values of each of the cards with cards that you acquire each round based on your performance in the round you just finished. So you come in first, you're going to get some points, you're going to get some money, and you're going to get like a card out of this draw bag that's clear that goes in and can either give you a power or change the value, negative, positive. And while the cards are 1 through 10, you can find yourself suddenly with a 14 or a 21 or a -3 even if you really are so inclined, which is really interesting. And so there's all these really cool little things about it. The one negative about this game is the teardown time. So it has not been fully de-sleeved or put away at this point because we really went wild with it, and there's a lot of work for me to do to put it away, but it was a lot of fun. So those were the games I've been playing recently.
That's an interesting thing about the teardown. That's the case with all those card crafting games. I would say the one thing about Custom Heroes that's unique is that it's such a sort of simple, light game compared to a lot of the other card crafting games. Sure. It's almost like it's that, like you were saying earlier, the teardown buckets compared to the experience. If I like Dead Reckoning, it's a big, robust game with a lot of game to it, and it's probably got about the same teardown situation going on as Custom Heroes. And I personally, I kind of like it. Like, I don't mind putting games away. It reminds me of when I'm sitting there punching boards and like organizing them and stuff like that. I just have fun doing that.
A lot of fun.
Typically. In fact, I don't want anyone else to help me typically.
So, and then Ryan and I played Tales of Berberia on the stream earlier this week. People can check that out on the channel. Ryan beat the absolute crap out of me. I'm not even going to, you can go watch and just see the destruction. Julie told me it was the biggest point spread she's ever seen in the game. I did terrible, but we had a lot of fun. I absolutely enjoyed the heck out of that game. It's super mean. It's cute, but stabby. Ryan, anything else you want to talk about?
Cool.
You know, I haven't, with social distancing and my Arkham campaign finished, I had been playing through Arkham. That ended, so I really haven't been gaming a lot. I've been playing solo Black Widow, which is a new Marvel Champions character, so I've been playing a lot of Marvel Champions. I think Black Widow's really good. I'm seeing that power creep. Jeremy used to talk about like Lord of the Rings, he'll understand. Lord of the Rings had that power creep where heroes started getting ridiculously more powerful, and Black Widow just feels very strong compared to some of the base heroes. But I could probably do a whole video on that. And then we played Role Player Adventures, which we have a video coming up next week for that launch. But really, I haven't been playing a ton, and I probably won't next week either, because for those of you who know, The Last of Us 2 comes out tonight, so I'm probably going to be pretty hooked on that for like the next couple days. So we'll see what I play over the next week.
Cool. I mean, Role Player Adventures, we'll have a video up on that on Tuesday. It's really good. Otherwise, it's been, we didn't have a chit chat last week, did we?
No.
If I remember right. No. So
no, we didn't.
So I played Tekken, obviously, and Pan Am. Pan Am's really good. I was surprised by that because that came out with Back to the Future and the Godzilla game, and as I said in the review, I didn't expect it to be good, but it's a Euro game with worker placement and a lot of other mechanics that I just don't like in games, but they meshed really well, so it's cool. I brought some visual aids because I didn't prepare pictures this week, so sorry about that. This game, which is from Capstone, it's called Stick'em. It's an old game, I believe. We played this at 3-player. It's not a fantastic 3-player game, but it plays up to 6, and it makes your brain work in really weird ways. It's very cool. It's a trick-taking game.
And also proof that I can win a game against Ryan.
Yeah, she just and me destroyed me. We got this, and we will play through this very soon. I posted about that. 2 more games. Floor Plan. I can't wait to play this. I like Villain Rights. This looks really interesting. Did we have a card for this on our Kickstarter?
Yeah,
we did, right?
Ryan and I.
So,
Yep.
yeah, that's not fair. But yeah, we're gonna. I'm gonna play that. I'm gonna play that this weekend, and then the big game I want to talk about is Cosmic Encounter Duel, which my wife absolutely hates. She, you know what? When I met my wife, she wasn't a gamer at all, and now she loves games. and she loves Euro games. Like she loves playing with wheat and corn and sheep and cattle. So that's kind of like her thing. So I introduced this game to her, which is one of those, it's a head-on-head. You're battling against one player, and it's taken from obviously Cosmic Encounter, the big multiplayer game of negotiation. And they distilled it down into what I think is a really neat two-player version of the game. I enjoyed it. I need to play it with one of you guys or somebody, obviously, to see if it is what I think it is. But I think it's cool. I mean, it has the same DNA as Cosmic Encounter, and it's got some really neat like hand management mechanisms, which I always enjoy. Like I feel smart when I play the right cards at the right time. But it is random, just like Cosmic Encounter. There's a lot of randomness built into the game, so I'm not sure if that's going to be a detriment or not, but we'll see. Look forward to playing it.
So was it the sci-fi theme you think was partly to blame for turning her off?
No, she just likes Euro mechanisms. She likes worker placement. She likes placing things. I don't know. That's her jam, and she just couldn't get into that. So we'll see.
All right. Well, I've played a few things. I already mentioned some of them. I'll start with Tawantinsuyu, and yes, I've been practicing at that pronunciation for the review. This is another letter T game from Boards and Dice. This one's coming out, I believe, in October. Although I think they just announced earlier this week, right? They're taking pre-orders for both it and Tekenyu now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Tekenyu's late July, right? In terms of when it's going to be available, I think.
July or August, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometime around then.
So Tawantinsuyu, this thing is on some level simpler to explain at first than Tekenyu, but when you start to explain all the options, like I said earlier, it gets a little crazy. Yeah. And then even after you explain it all, and everyone digests that, you'll go around the table, and inevitably there will be players who go, I guess, no. And then, there's just a lot of that going around the table. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I love having those gears turn in my head, but when there's 4 players around the table and that's happening, it can make for a longer game. There's I want to say 70 some spaces you can place workers, and it's not like each space is a different thing like a Feast for Odin. You're placing in these places on this board to collect things, collect resources and do some actions. Anyway, watch the review when I have that up. I've been playing that quite a bit. And then I played Back to the Future, the Prospero Hall one. And I will tell you a little bit about this because this is going to be a little longer before we get the review up. I played this. Jeremy, you played it once, and then you and I played it again. And we did play it a little bit wrong, making it hard on ourselves. Sure. But still, it seemed almost impossible. Mm-hmm. Then I played it at least 4 more times with the correct rules. And the rule I'm talking about is we weren't re-rolling some of the dice when we could, so we actually made it a little easier. Again, played it at 2 players with 2 characters, and then played it at 2 players with 4 characters just to see what the player count would do. And just wasn't getting close to beating this thing. Finally, Kira and Jeremy and I played it last week, and we beat it. Now, it was the only time I had played it at 3-player. I haven't done a scientific research project to see if that has any bearing on this, but coincidentally, I played it again at 3-player this past weekend and also won again. So it went from a game that was like I couldn't even imagine being winnable to we happened to win it. So I'm going to sort of look into that a little bit more to figure out whether it's luck or whether there's some strategies that are just the hardcore things that you have to do every time. But been playing that a fair amount. And then finally, Dead Reckoning. I won't bore you with the details because the review of that will be coming out pretty soon next week. I think they have a Kickstarter hitting in early July, but we're embargoed with some content, so we're going to get the Dead Reckoning review up. This is a card crafting game, a pirate or privateer themed game with a ton of stuff going on, and it's really just driven by the deck building. So having a lot of fun with that.
So real quick, Alicia's in the comments, and she really liked Back to the Future. And she's saying, and for me, I just want to throw in here, I don't know, I was so frustrated when we first played it, and then when we beat it at 3, I was that was not the same game.
Oh, that's an interesting point. When we beat it, the 3 of us, it was very anticlimactic. Mm-hmm. We were we knew the round before, okay, we're gonna win. Okay, we won. When Alicia and her son and I played it, it came down to, just like a good co-op should, it came down to the final roll of 3 dice on my turn, and that roll could have lost it or it could have won it. And as crazy and as chaotic as that sounds, I think that goes hand in hand with a lot of good co-op moments. Like when it comes down to that and you've invested all that time and it comes down and you win, it's fantastic. When you lose, it can also kind of be fun. So that's what happened when we played it. Plus, I should mention, since she commented, we'd watched the entire Back to the Future trilogy this weekend.
Nice.
We watched
Nice.
The first movie just before we played it, so her son had a little bit more familiarity with what was going on.
Cool.
And her.
So
But
we
yeah,
have a
that's all I've
question
been
real
playing.
quick because you brought it up in a previous episode, and before we sign off, asking you about how D&D is going.
Oh, D&D is going. So we've jumbled the party around. Jeremy stepped away. He hasn't joined the party yet. I might bring him in at a certain point. But this is what's happened. We started with Rob and Patrick from Blue Peg Pink Peg and one of our local friends, Dan. And we started that 2 weeks ago. Last night, in fact, we had our second session. And I left the first session a bit on a cliffhanger where they all heard a snap behind them in the forest. And then last night, they turned around to investigate what that snap was. And it was Marty and Tony from Rolling Dice and Taking Names, or actually their characters in the game. So they joined the party. So we had a 5-person party who went into a goblin hideout and had a mixed amounts of success. But I hope and I think everyone's enjoying it. I can tell you this, preparing to DM D&D is as much work as I've done on anything in my entire professional career. And it's causing me more stress than anything because I'm so focused on wanting everyone to have a good time. But
you're using a storybook too, aren't you? One of the adventure modules?
Yeah, so it's not...
imagine without having that. It's quite a chore.
It's not exactly... it's kind of paint by numbers, but at the same time, I'm getting to a point where the players can choose to go in a different order than what is in that book in front of me. So I'm compelled to go, oh, are you sure you want to do that? Because this is what I thought you were going to do next. Sure. So anyway, a lot of fun. Hopefully it keeps going well. I can't imagine when we're going to be done, but we're getting there.
Cool. Anything else, guys?
I don't think so. We want to watch that EA press conference.
Yes, we do. So why don't we say goodbye to everybody and go get back online?
All right. So again, just make a comment below to be entered to win this week's prize of Tiny Epic Tactics. And we will see you guys maybe next week, maybe the week after.
Maybe.
We'll see.
Bye-bye.